7:30 p.m. and I call this meeting of the Needham Design Review Board to order. I am Mark Lusing, the board chair. I would like to confirm that all members and applicants expected on the agenda are present and can hear me. So I'm going to first go through the members of the board. Nelson Hammer.
He's muted.
Yeah, Nelson, you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay, Chad Riley.
Present.
Deborah Robinson.
Here.
And also here with us are Rana Monadorfer and Elisa Lichman, town staff members that support us. The applicants on the agenda, I'm just going to read the project, and if you would respond with your name. And I think the second item is a rather large contingent, so we'll sort of figure out if you can just, everybody can at least say their name once and that'll be in the record. But Laser MD Med Spa, 922 Highland Avenue.
Tim Parker.
Thank you, Tim. And Children's Hospital, 380 First Avenue.
I'm Lisa Hogarty, Senior Vice President of Real Estate, Boston Children's Hospital.
Tim Sullivan, Goulston and Stores.
Bob Smart, Needham Council.
Scott Parker with Payette Associates.
Glenn Doherty with Tetra Tech.
Gerald Topping, Senior Project Manager with Boston Children's Hospital.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Welcome to this open meeting of the Needham Design Review Board, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. We have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations for the meeting. For this meeting, the Needham Design Review Board is convened by Zoom app as posted on the town's website, Design Review Board page, identifying how the public may join. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. DRB meetings do not typically require allowing public comment. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Some of the attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care that you don't screen share your computer unless we review it first. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please speak clearly to help generate an accurate minutes. All the supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. I would like to review the remote meeting procedures for tonight's meeting. I will introduce each applicant on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will take comments or questions from Design Review Board members. After discussion, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. The building department requires electronic submission of building permit applications. A copy of the application, stamped and noted for the type of approval that it receives, will be emailed to the applicant by the DRB support staff. That can then be attached to your building permit application. In cases of site plan review, which we have tonight, we will forward that information to the planning board. We will now start with the first item on the agenda. So why don't we, Tim Parker, Fast Signs, applying for an awning and sign and lighting update for Laser MD Med Spa, 922. Go ahead.
So my client, Laser MD, is taking over the old laser removal at 922 Highland Ave. They're currently existing awning with one color and one color. We're looking to recover the same existing awning in its place with black sunbrella with white text. They would prefer, as you can see on the paperwork, potentially a small logo on either end of the awning, as most people come walking down the street and can see it from either direction don't always look at it straight on from Highland Ave. So there'll be a small logo on either end of the awning, which currently there is not. That's the first application.
Okay, why don't you just discuss the facade changes, which are
Okay, so the current 4 lights, or the 4 goosenecks, scoop neck, whatever you want to call them, are currently quite faded and red and don't really match either the facade, to be honest, because they're quite weathered, and or the current awning application. So we're looking to have them the same exact lighting, but have them painted black instead of red. They really do need to be repainted to look nice, to be honest. So since that needs to be taken care of, we thought it would be better that they went with black, as their awning is going to be black. And it is a sort of neutral standard color as well. We're not looking for any outlandish color.
okay. Thank you. Deborah, do you want to start? You're muted, Deborah.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it's, I don't have any problem with it. I think the awning looks nice. I think the black goosenecks look nice.
Nelson, you have questions?
I agree with Deborah. I think the black is preferable to what's there now. It's more difficult to read the existing sign than it is the new one, even though the new one doesn't have larger lettering. And painting the faded red of the lights is a vast improvement as well. I'm good.
Okay. Chad?
Yeah, generally agree. I'm guessing that the logos on the side awning are going to be so small that nobody's really going to see it anyways, but it would just, for a car going by, it's going to look like a graphic element, and I'm sure it's small enough anyways that it probably wouldn't even count as a sign. I know that a lot of times we see that sort of registered trademark in a sign. I think the awning would look better if you didn't have it, although I'm sure it's part of their logo.
We can take it off. I think it's...
But yeah, otherwise looks fine. Let's see. Yeah, it's 10 inches on the capital L, right?
Correct.
So not huge. Yeah, and there's plenty of space around it. Yeah, so I'm fine.
It's actually less
Otherwise.
space than the current name on the current awning.
Yeah.
We thought by having it on the ends, we could end up with a little bit smaller in the front by being able to sort of compensate for the end pieces. And that depth of the awning is 20 inches. So we're at about 14 inches maybe total at the most, left front to back for the thing, which makes it only, I think it's only about 3 inches tall or something.
And I appreciate you giving us the view looking down the street. I don't see any other goosenecks. It's really just the 7, the 3 over Vino Divino and
Correct.
The 4 over this storefront,
That is
right?
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
There's none on the rest of the building. So we would be taking care of all 7.
Yeah.
And they're very much in need of attention.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I just ran a quick check on the square footage, Tim, about on those small side panels. And they're small enough that they're classified as by right.
Okay, that's great.
You're under even under 1 square foot, so
Okay, that's fantastic.
okay with those. My only question, just on the framing, is this the same frame that's there?
Exactly the same frame. It will be repainted. It's already black. It'll be repainted black just because it's got some rust spots. But it's the exact. We're just taking it down, sanding it, repainting it black, and using the same exact square footage.
Okay. So then we'll have 2 reviews then. The first is for the facade changes, which is the changing the color of the awning and the painting of the light fixtures. So I would take a motion to approve that without conditions.
So I think they're both, if I may, just before, if I may I think I was told they had to be applied separately. So they're both their own application. One is the chains and one is the awning.
That's how we're voting it too. So.
Oh, I apologize. I misunderstood. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I have 2 applications, which is what I need. So.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you, Elisa.
So, motion to approve. Okay.
Second?
Seconded.
All right. Roll call vote. Nelson Hammer,
Yes, I approve.
Chad Riley,
Approve.
Deborah Robinson,
Approve.
and the chair approves. The second element then is also that we would approve the signage applied to the awning with the condition that they remove the R registration logo.
Okay.
So moved.
I second.
Okay, and there's the vote. Nelson Hammer,
Approved.
Chad Riley,
Approve.
Deborah Robinson,
Approve.
and the chair approves. So Tim, we will get these marked up and stamped, and Elise
you.
will send them back to you.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you all. It's nice to see you all, even in this manner.
You too.
Thanks. Have a lovely evening. I appreciate your time.
You
Bye, dear.
too.
Good luck.
Bye.
All right, next up is Children's Hospital applying for site plan review, 380 First Avenue. So I will say the way that this works is that for site plan review, we simply write a report to the planning board. It's not simply, but we write a report to the planning board with our comments. So it's, you sort of get approval or not approval from us, but mostly they will act on our suggestions as they choose through, as they go through the rest of the site plan review with you. So I will turn it over. Bob, do you want to start or?
I think Tim Sullivan's going to lead off.
So thanks, Bob. So, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, we have a few background slides to share, so I can share my screen if that works for you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. So again, Tim Sullivan, Goulston Stores here on behalf of Children's Hospital. We have a few folks with us, Lisa Hogarty of Children's, Jerry Topping of Children's as well, Scott Parker from Payette, and Glenn Doherty, and as well as Bob, who started. So we just wanted to give a little bit of background. We've been working with the town now for over a year. So we thought it might be helpful for Lisa just to give a brief intro as to what Children's is doing in Needham, and then I can give a little bit of overview of where we are in the process, and then Scott will walk through some of the design elements. So Lisa?
Great, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the Design Review Board. Appreciate your time this evening. At Children's, we have been looking for about 4 years for an area where we could build a surgical subspecialty facility. In Boston, as you know, the Longwood Medical area is quite land constrained, and even with building a brand new clinical tower, the capacity related to operating rooms and procedural space is very tight. So over the course of the last 18 months, we identified this amazing site in Needham. And so the types of programs we would bring to this facility are ortho sports medicine, gastroenterology, very specialized ophthalmology, otolaryngology, otherwise known as ear, nose, and throat, and those types of specialty services that only Children's provides in the greater New England region. So we're very excited to become an important neighbor in Needham. And so Tim will take you through the background, and then we can share the design elements with you as we have them at the moment.
Thanks, Lisa. So this is unlike some sites that may be coming for the first time. This site is actually a permitted site. So we wanted to give a little bit of background refresher as to what the site is and where it is in the process. So The site we're talking about is in the New England Business Center zoning district. And the use that we want to do, a pediatric medical facility, was not allowed. So the first thing we had to do is modify the zoning. And that's really what we've spent a lot of time with over the past year. So in the New England Business Center zoning district, we're talking about Center 128 West. This is, outlined in yellow is the zoning district for orientation. Route 128 is on the left. The town line with Newton is on the right, and Highland Avenue's on the top, and Kendrick's on the bottom. Outlined in the aqua color is the development site that we're talking about, which is identified as Center 128 West. This is the approved site plan in plan view. And within the boundary of the site, you can see the approved development program. So the site is approved for 4 office buildings, a hotel, and 2 parking structures. Some of the project has been built, and that's shown in gray. So this is probably most known as the TripAdvisor site. So the TripAdvisor is one of those office buildings that's been constructed. That's shown in gray on the bottom left corner of the site. And then moving to the right is the hotel that's constructed. And then a majority of the parking garage identified as parking garage B, shown in gray. The 3 solid red parcels are approved for office building, but are not yet built. And the hashed red are the portions of the parking structures that have not been constructed. So on the bottom, hashed red is what's known as Garage A, and the hashed area between the 37 A Street development pad and the Garage B is an addition to Garage B that has been previously approved but not yet constructed. So we'll show our proposed site plan in just a moment, but just by way of background, what we're proposing is a pediatric medical facility. So we're proposing to amend the special permit site plan approval that is in existence now to allow the newly allowed use, the pediatric medical facility, which, as Lisa mentioned, it's not a hospital, no overnight beds, no ER, it's an ambulatory care facility. That's at 380 First Avenue at the site here. And we're making that site slightly square footage wise larger, but we're not changing the overall square footage approved. That square footage is coming from A Street, the 37 A Street building. So the 37 A Street building is getting slightly smaller, and the 380 First Avenue building is getting bigger by way of square footage. The overall height on that building is not changing. It was approved at 84 feet. We're still maintaining that at 380 First Ave. And the 37 A Street is actually, a floor will be taken off that to move the square footage over to 380 First. So that's what we're proposing by way of an amendment. To this point in time, where we've been, the first thing, as I mentioned, we needed to amend the zoning. So we've been working with the planning board, and we spent some time on the parking ratios and the like, and we went through that. We developed the ratio based on comprehensive info submitted by our traffic consultant, which was peer reviewed. So we'll be parking the site at 1 space per 290, which was in the zoning amendment approved by town meeting. We will submit more information, but on a preliminary basis, as part of the town meeting process, we also reviewed trip generation with the planning board and the town. VHB did an analysis on that as well, which was also peer reviewed by Beta and confirmed, and roughly showed that the traffic would be, based on existing counts pre-COVID, roughly the same as what was approved for the office buildings, slightly higher by 1% in the peak AM and slightly higher in the PM. If the entire project is constructed, we have no plans right now to move forward with the 2 office buildings, no immediate plans to do that. So the 37 A Street and the B Street sites are going to remain development pads at this point. So this analysis focused on the entire build out. So the proposed project, as I mentioned, it's at the 380 First Avenue building. It's 224,000 square feet, which is roughly 34,500 square feet larger than the building that was approved for this location. But again, that comes out of the 37 A Street building. So there's no overall square footage increase. based on the approved parking ratio, that requires about 773 spaces for that. And so those additional spaces will be provided on site while still maintaining the 857 that are required for the abutting east project. So when we build the 381st Avenue, if it's approved by the town, we will have the number of spaces on site required to satisfy zoning for our use, for all the uses on site, and for the adjacent 128 East, a portion of that. So this is probably not very helpful on Zoom, but it is included in your package. This is the site plan changes, and they're modest. So the garage A is changing slightly to provide a bit of a bump out at the front, and that's in order to really provide accessibility and elevators to the roof. So there's a slight bump out on that. And then garage B is not changing, except that it will be constructed to its full capacity, which was previously approved. So in order to build the 773 spaces, we're still figuring out exactly how we're going to do that, but it will involve the completion of garage B and likely surface spaces in the interim until we build the other two office buildings, which would necessitate the construction of garage A. So then you can see the 37 A Street building. The green area is showing a reduction in the footprint of that building, a slight reduction. The remainder of the reduction is coming by taking a floor off the building. So it was previously approved at 5 stories and 70 feet, and it is going to 4 stories and 56 feet. The purple line work here is really just showing some of the walkways and the like that are just changing slightly for circulation patterns to match the new building footprint. And Scott can talk a little bit about that from a landscape perspective. And then finally, the red outline here shows the difference between the approved footprint of the 381st Avenue building and what we're proposing. Again, the changes are, modest here. They're really kind of squaring off the building to get that square footage. So same height, not getting any closer to the property line, and just changing how the footprint is configured a bit to accommodate the program that we're proposing. So that's at a very high level what we're proposing by way of site plan change. So finally, just as far as where we are in the process before I hand it over to Scott, we, as I mentioned, went to town meeting and town meeting unanimously approved the zoning amendment to allow the use. In the normal course now, we're waiting for the Attorney General to sign off on that before we can submit our special permit amendment application. And in the interim, what we've done is we've met with the development review team in August, and we're here with this board tonight, and we hope to submit the special permit beginning of October, the special permit amendment request. So with that, I will shut my screen off and stop sharing, and Scott Parker from Payette will talk a little bit about the design, and then Glenn Doherty from Tetra Tech is here if there are site plan questions.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. I too have a screen to share. Is that okay if I share that?
Yes, go ahead, Tim. Oh, I'm sorry, Scott, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, I assume everyone can see that. So I just want to walk you through a few images of, it may take some of these slides a little bit of time to move here. Let me get that to go. Okay. Just wanted to start with some actual image existing site, because the renderings I'm about to show after this actually align with some of these images. So the top one on the upper right is the view of the site from Founders Drive, which coming in right off of B Street. You see the TripAdvisor building to the left and the existing garage to the right. A little amphitheater, I assume you can see my cursor, but a little amphitheater that's been built right by TripAdvisor is right here in the front, and our building is going to basically fill the frame here right in the middle of all that. To the right of that, you see the view that you would be seeing of the building and the site if you came out of the existing parking garage and walked towards 95. And then the two lower views are of the site from 95 south or from 95 traveling north, and then from 95 traveling south. So that's where the next 4 renderings are going to be taken. So here's an image of the proposed building. You see the TripAdvisor building to the left and the parking garage to the right. Front and center on the lower floor, you see the new entrance lobby and drop off. And above that, you're seeing a lot of window areas, which are actually the waiting areas on each floor. The building itself is a very warm gray brick. And you may notice that there's a number of features here with the sort of twisting of the facade. What that actually is not only a design feature, but it's an energy feature. The building sort of twists out where we have the largest windows, and it works especially on this side, which is the southern side and gets a lot of sun, to actually help reduce the heat gain that the building is getting. We do that on the west side as well. For when we get the warm summer suns on both the south and west sides, we'll be able to sort of defray quite a bit of energy costs by doing this with the building. If I look at the next image, this one may take a little bit, no, there it is. So this is the view of the building right when you come out of the facade, showing the drop-off area at the bottom, and then that more of that sort of cascading of the facade upwards as you go. Each layer sort of protecting the glass on the floor below it. One thing you'll also notice, I'm going to show a picture in a bit of the brickwork, is the brickwork is this, as I said, gray, sort of warm gray textured brick. It's more textured at the bottom than it is the top, so there's a nice way that the building actually lands on the ground as it goes down. This is a view from 128 traveling north, and you sort of see the signage along that building. You also see, again, the facade twists out on this side, as well as there's some glass areas there that are being protected. Those are more staff areas, unlike the waiting areas on the other side of the building. And then viewing it traveling south, you can see from this angle, it's very similar in height to the TripAdvisor building. You see the screen wall on the roof hiding the mechanical, much like TripAdvisor. So there's some unification between these two buildings. And then from a facade, I think, perspective, these are the elevations. This shows the sort of staggering of the brickwork. These are brick projections that are much denser at the bottom of the building, and they get lighter as they go up. So you see on the lower floors, it's very dense. And then again, at the upper floor, there's actually no projections whatsoever. So this is the main south facade that with that entrance area here. And then this should be this is the west facade, again, with the cantilevered portions of the building projecting and protecting that glass. Again, the sign, this is the sign along 128. And then we have both this is sort of the northwest facade. There's a lot of more glass and staff areas along this side, and then some of the clinical floors, you'll see this is surgery, which has a very high, small glass window. And then there's mechanical on this floor, so there's louvers on this side. And then finally, that facade, that's what you'll see if you were in the parking garage. Not many people will see this because the parking garage is so close, but you can actually see our loading dock on this side. And then I just wanted to bring this is one of the brick mock-ups that we've done. So this actually shows the brick we're thinking of. It's like I said, a warm gray brick, almost stone-like. It's a Roman bond, so it's a very long, thin brick. And then this bottom course here is the projection that we're talking about that occurs every 4 courses on the lower floors, and then it thins out as the building goes up, and there's fewer and fewer of those until at the top it's just a flush brick building. And I just wanted to say that's, so you can begin to relate that brickwork to this actual image. We tried to get it as close as we could. And then in terms of the garage, I'm just going to quick go through that. Obviously, Tim said this will be constructed later, but we were thinking that the garage itself, that head house projection, would have a very similar brick feeling to it. We didn't do the twisting of the facade as we did on the building, but just wanted to have some reference across the campus that there's some similarities between the brickwork and across the various buildings. And then here's an image of that from 128 East, looking towards the West Campus. This is the walkway with the new hotel that's being built between the two parking garages with TripAdvisor in the distance in our new building over here hidden by the garage. In terms of landscape, I just brought the landscape plan here. I can try and zoom in a little bit on this, but we're really working with the landscape that's already been put in place out there. We tried to work with that amphitheater and, really try and emphasize or, integrate it with the new entrance to our building. So where the existing amphitheater is and the crosswalks that currently cross the two streets there, we made sure that our drop-off area didn't interfere with that. And then we really worked to sort of get some paving and some plantings that would sort of enlarge the feeling of that amphitheater, greatly grab this drop-off area and really try and tie all the buildings in the site, the TripAdvisor that's here, the new office building, the future parking garage, the current parking garage, and our building, really tie them into a nice sort of walking path around there. In terms of the landscaping, again, we have a lot of ground covers, some grass areas, trees along First Avenue as prescribed. Again, we were working with the palette that was already approved and that you're already seeing go out there with the TripAdvisor building. So with that, I do have other drawings, but they're the drawings you have in your package. I wasn't going to go through those. I just have them in this package in case we want to refer to anything. And that's pretty much it for me.
Thanks, Scott. Mr. Chair, that's all we have. We're happy to get into site plan. Glenn's here, but we thought that would be a good overview. But we're happy to get into anything and answer questions.
Nelson, do you want to talk more about this site plan specifically in a few minutes, or do you want to just get a preview, a presentation now of the whole thing so that we have it all set in?
The more I can hear about it, the better off I'll be. It was difficult for me to read it on the screen rather than seeing it in a drawing. I can tell you that from what I do see, it's very lushly planted. I presume that's in keeping with other facets of the development in the area. And when I say lushly developed, I say that as a positive, but it also brings to mind the fact that it's going to be a costly entity to maintain. I'm presuming it's going to be irrigated. The plant list looks excellent. I think it's a very good selection of choices. I haven't studied it enough to see whether or not I agree with the way things have been planted in terms of their density, but it seems on a first blush that it's extremely densely planted. And again, it goes both ways. It looks great. It'll be difficult or expensive to maintain. And if the hospital has the budget to do that, I'll be a happy viewer.
Okay. So why don't we, Scott, I'll have you keep the screen share on just in case there's a particular drawing that one of the members wants to see at this point. But I will start with Chad. Do you want to start us off on questions or comments?
Sure. A couple things. One is I appreciate the kind of thought and the design that go in. I have no doubt that Boston Children's Hospital wants this to be a landmark destination type building, and I have no doubt that Pat is definitely a firm capable of delivering that. I like the design. I'm seeing it first pass. One thing that springs to mind is I know when we were doing the master plan approval and we were trying to figure out a kind of legal construction to enable future projects to happen without needing to go through a full review right from scratch each time. We came up with an idea of using the first building that was constructed as a kind of template or a baseline. And I would say that the design of this building is probably much more contemporary than what was written up in that. I support it personally. I like the design, but I would encourage us to make sure that we go back and we look at that original document to make sure that when we're getting all the approvals in place that if we need to document any kind of deviation or departure from it, that we do that. The intent of having done that in the first place was there was a concern that if the first building was built up to a quality that was being promised, and then the whole development was sold and another developer came in, they might build it to a lesser quality. So we were trying to protect the town against the quality deteriorating over time. And I have no doubt that this, what's being presented here will help elevate and keep the quality of design and the quality of execution high. So I would just suggest we go back and we look at that and make sure that we document and support anything that might be seen as a deviation from that original kind of master plan. Another one is there was a view of kind of an aerial view between the garages. So maybe if you could scroll over to that one, it's called Garage Facade Aerial Looking Towards First Ave, Route 128. When the whole site was being permitted originally, there was a lot of discussion about this particular area. It was a strong unifying factor in the overall master plan of this whole development, and trying to create a real pedestrian mall and plaza, connecting that amphitheater back to one of the central greens over by Shark Ninja and some of the drop-off points there. Just at first pass, the image looks like it's maybe more paving than I would have remembered from the original one, and I'm not suggesting it's a bad thing. There's a lot of thought that's gone into the paving patterns. We also spent a lot of time talking about the feeling of space kind of sandwiched between two rather large parking garage structures. And we spent a lot of time there were different ideas about whether there might be lanterns or some sort of kind of sculptural element suspended between the two. And so I would just say or whether, they should be screened or whether there were berms that might rise up. And so I would just say as you continue to develop that, I would encourage some thought about the quality of space between the two garages and what impact they'll have on the feeling of that space between the two garages, and whether or not there might be things that are done to help keep a pedestrian scale feeling appropriate and not overwhelmed by the garages on both sides. And then I think just the last thing that I noted was I appreciate that you're showing us at least the first pass at some of the signage. There was another image. It was the one that's called 128 Facade from South Traveling North. I suspect that part of this is a kind of perspective distortion, but the size of the Boston Children's of Needham looks like it's almost half as big. Yeah, that one. It looks like the signage is almost half as big as the building next to it. There are some restrictions on signage. Obviously, we want people to be able to find this just as much as you do, but as we move to the point of looking at specific signage, we'll really want to look carefully at precedents and what was done for TripAdvisor and what is allowed by the bylaws and where we might need relief. The other piece of it, which we ran into at another hospital facility in town, is invariably there are donors required to make projects like this happen. And we would hope we're not in a situation where something has already been promised to a donor that we've never seen, and we're really kind of being asked to be in a position where to just kind of rubber stamp something. And so as the design is being built, typically you'll have an idea of where various kinds of donor signage might go. And even though we don't necessarily know who the donors are yet, I would encourage us to have conversations about that early on, just so we're kind of in the same page and we're not caught between a rock and a hard place if something's been promised, but it seems out of keeping with the building or the scale of the environment or things like that. And we just kind of keep that an active conversation as you continue to move through the process. And then hopefully then it's all good and easy when we really come down to it. And then, at some point there's going to be a major signage package where there's just a ton of directional signage and those things. And, again, we'll probably be spending several hours some night going through every one of those things as we get to that point. But having a well-prepared package that's all broken out into the individual signed packages that will need to be approved will help us move through that. But that's obviously a little ways down the road. So I think just generally speaking, those are my thoughts. I'm definitely supportive of what I've seen in this at this stage of the review. But those are my kind of initial impressions.
Yeah, I'll just mention a couple things now. I want to confirm again that that parking garage, the second built garage, is not being built now, correct?
Correct.
So I think it's my preference to, I mean, it's nice that you can show us sort of the concepts and everything, but we'll really review that when you're ready to build it rather than now, because we can spend a lot of time talking about what we want on that, but it's really not that relevant at this point. So I'd sort of like to kind of keep that on the side for now, talk about any modifications to the other main garage that you're doing, and then talk about this building and the landscaping. And to Chad's point on the signage, I would, we can have some discussions in the future. I wouldn't wait 2 years, but maybe a few months from now, have another, just an informal meeting with us, talk about some of the signage concepts, because I know, for instance, a sign like that, the wiring for that would be built right in. And if you build it into the brick and then we say, no, it's too big, then we've got trouble. So maybe you should start thinking about your signage practice a little earlier than you might normally. And especially consider the ideas about possible donor signage locations that you might want and how that might work, and really get with a graphic company to start to sort some of that out. Because I'd like to do a little bit like what we did for this whole site, which was set some design guidelines in place that you can operate from going forward, rather than, as has been the case on with the local hospital that's in Needham Center, and also one of the hotels there, they built in all the signage and then the signage wasn't approved. And it got to be a difficult situation for everybody. And we don't like having to do that, but we really did not like what they were trying to do. So I would encourage you to do something in the near future on that front. So I would say, Deborah, do you have any questions or comments?
I mute myself. I also like the fact that the gray brick is different from the other buildings and makes this distinctive. Is the glass is going to be clear glass?
Yes, it's all clear glass.
The only thing that sort of jumps out at me when looking at this rendering is that the mechanical screen is just kind of dark and monolithic, and maybe that's something that rather than be sort of generic, that's like the other buildings, maybe something that's designed a little more to be unique for this building, and not so just sort of blackish looking. Maybe it's just the rendering would maybe help it, and maybe something that would be an improvement. I was stopping myself from sort of saying that maybe just where this is such a big and blocky, that's something to break up the scale a little bit might be nice. But I mean, I understand what the design is, but it is very very much a lot of just enclosed wall rather than glass, or and a little bit lacking in scale, perhaps, to the facade. Just a thought.
Yeah, I would agree with Deborah that it's a very large panel on the top of pretty monolithic block of masonry sitting on a couple, the sizes of those different brick zones change as you go up, but it's a very large piece on the top. And there aren't a lot of windows. I understand that's a little bit due to the function. But did you consider introducing other materials? One of the, when Chad was talking about the design guidelines for the overall development, the basic idea was sort of a mix of stone, masonry, metal, and glass. And there were various ways that it could be done. You can see what NBC did down the street, what Shark Ninja did, similar kinds of things. was there any consideration for introducing some sort of just a metal, even if it's an opaque metal, to break up sort of the large expanse of the brick?
Well, we've been through a number of design variations on this. I think we came to this conclusion simply because it was the cleanest and simplest feeling, and we weren't introducing a lot of other elements into it. But I can see your point. You know, especially we were trying to get the penthouse screen wall to tie into the TripAdvisor, just because it was trying to, you know, get some relationship between the two buildings and some consistency, and really just a feeling that, hoping that that portion of the building just goes away and you really look at the rest of the building. But I think the other thing you're seeing is we tend to put a higher parapet on medical buildings, and they tend to have a higher floor to floor, so it does look like it's a pretty tall screen wall, or a tall brick wall. So we could certainly look at that.
Okay, yeah, and I would agree with Deborah. I would suggest that while I understand trying to tie into the TripAdvisor, you're going to also do two other buildings there eventually. And I just think that it's a pretty stark contrast on a fairly monolithic colored building. And might be my preference that it be a lighter screen material, and maybe a little less concern is necessary with tying to TripAdvisor.
Yeah, we often do lighter screen walls because they can tend to reflect the sky and then they just go away.
Yeah, no, I think that might be a good idea here. The other thing is, so the projected brick that you showed us in the close-up of the mock-up, is that the same color brick, or is it a different color brick as well?
Let me pull that. This is an actual mock-up of the brick we've been proposing. We just received this today. That's why we only have a photograph of it. But and this is the projection we were showing, the lower one. The upper one's a slightly less projected brick.
And that's the same color as all the rest of the wall masks?
Yes.
Okay.
We're trying to get there's quite a bit of variation in this brick. That's what we were looking for, to give it that real stone-like feel.
Well, it's an interesting look. Yeah, it shows up better in the sample piece. Other questions or comments at this point? All right, so as I said, we usually, at this point, we make a report to the planning board, but we do typically say that it's approved or not approved. So I will go through the vote. I think that the only, if we were going to make a requirement, it would be that the mechanical screen be a lighter color. Would the other members agree with that or not?
Yeah, or even just sort of broken up and not quite so, doesn't have to be a smooth, I mean, in the rendering, it looks like a very smooth surface as well. Not just color, it could be more of a texture or more open.
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to a variety of solutions. I think when you look at the way the lines on the brickwork are, and some of the way the windows are kind of sliding past each other, if there was something that had a little bit more of kind of horizontal play in it, then, you know, that I'd be open to a slightly different interpretation too.
Okay, well, that's how I'll note it in the report to the planning board then, that, you know, we suggest that they explore some alternatives and not necessarily just use a color that matches TripAdvisor, whether it's in texture or color. All right. Anything else? I'm losing everybody here, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, when you look at this image in particular, and then the package is also the rendering of the elevation with the Boston Children's, is if you looked at a logo that on the building that was a bit more in keeping with the size of TripAdvisor, and you know, I'm not necessarily saying that would be limit, absolute limit, but it was a straight elevation A 3.02. The sign of the signage is kind of in keeping with the sign of the signage is kind of keeping in scale with that panel of brick. But if it was reduced to something closer to TripAdvisor, would the logo proportionally start to look very small and that brick even look more vast? So I would encourage just kind of looking at that with the signage at different sizes and make sure that it still looks balanced.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, so I'm going to just take a motion that we approve this for providing comment to the planning board.
So moved.
So seconded.
All right. So the vote, Nelson Hammer,
I approve.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approve.
and the chair approves. So we will put some notes together that will forward them to the planning board along with a copy of a stamped copy of the documents that I received from Tim a week or so ago. And you can move forward from there. Again, I would get in early on the signage just so we can figure it out with you. Especially those big ones. You've got two. We did not allow TripAdvisor to do two. We have not allowed the Marriott did two smaller ones, but they had to shrink them to do them. So we're very cautious about, especially on the internal signage, how big does it need to be within the campus? Sometimes it's less so. So just consider that as you go forward.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so next item is to review the minutes of August 24th, 2020. Any questions, changes, comments? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I so move.
And Deborah seconds. So Nelson Hammer,
I agree. I approve.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approve.
and the chair approves. Our next meeting is October 5th, so we have a bit of a stretch. But we have a couple people that are likely to be coming in already, so, and somebody who missed tonight, so I assume they'll be back. So I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
All right, Nelson Hammer,
Approve.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approve.
and the chair approves. So we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
You too.